So welcome back. Let's start discussing a few behavioral change models and theories. There are many theories, formal and informal, that can explain health behaviors. In psychology, many of you have learned about learning theories such as classical conditioning. In classical conditioning, a person or an animal learns to respond in a certain way to a stimulus, like a bell or a light, that wouldn't normally cause a response. The classic example of classical conditioning is Pavlov's dog experiment. Specifically, Pavlov was able to get his dogs to salivate when they heard a bell, which normally wouldn't prompt a dog to drool. He did this by pairing the bell, a neutral stimulus, with yummy meat powder, an unconditioned stimulus that did make the dogs salivate. When the dogs started to associate the bell with the food, they started to salivate at the sound of the bell. Eventually, the dogs would salivate when they heard the bell, even when the meat powder wasn't given to them. So I see this with my own dog. I like to chew gum when I go for a walk with my dog. So when I go to the drawer where I keep my gum, my dog will get excited and run to the door. So he associates the act of grabbing a piece of gum with going for a walk. So classical conditioning is learning that occurs when a conditioned response or conditioned stimulus is paired with an unconditioned stimulus to create a conditioned response. Other examples were described in the book. For example, just entering a clinic can induce nausea for chemotherapy patients. And we may be classically conditioned to fear or disregard people who are different from ourselves. Another learning theory is operant conditioning. We all remember B.F. Skinner's work. Skinner used an operant conditioning chamber to test animals' responses and behaviors to see if they were more or less likely to recur if followed by positive or negative reinforcement. In the Skinner box, animals were prompted by a light, the stimulus, to hit a bar. If they hit the bar, they were rewarded with a food pellet. So he found that behavior was strengthened or weakened depending on consequences. In our book, Sanderson described how even fast food restaurants may be using operant conditioning to increase their sales. Think about it. If you go to McDonald's for a meal, you'll be rewarded with relatively quick, tasty, and inexpensive food, and possibly even a prize. Therefore, we'll come back for more. So that might be, whether they know it or not, an example of operant conditioning. So I'm going to stop here, and in our next mini lecture, we'll start talking about the health belief model.